Hello and welcome everybody to the Poker Fuse podcast. It is March 25th, 2020. This is episode number 47. I'm your host, Mike Gentili, along with my co-host, Nick Jones. This week on the podcast, with so much of the world's population staying at home, entries in prize pools in the Sunday majors spiked. We run through the numbers and significant happenings from this weekend's action. Social distancing and self-quarantining have caused the cancellation of both professionally organized live poker games and home and pub games alike. We'll get you up to speed on which live tournaments have been rescheduled online and how to keep your home games thriving. And finally, online poker cash game traffic is surging as people at home look to entertain themselves. We'll give you some of the latest traffic figures and put them into historical context. Once again, any conversation about poker, particularly online poker, needs to have the context of our current situation, which is in the midst of this pandemic, the coronavirus, COVID-19. It's brought a lot of players to the poker tables, and that was apparent this Sunday with a huge turnout for the big Sunday majors. Nick, what do we know about last Sunday? What are some of the things that happened?
Yeah, so Sunday was always going to be a very big day regardless, because PokerStars was hosting its anniversary Sunday Million, which was a $12.5 million guaranteed online poker tournament. So it was, that's their largest ever. It's a guarantee designed to make it their largest ever online poker tournament hosted, just a fraction above the previous record they set for themselves of $12.4 million back in 2011. So almost 10 years ago, they had a Sunday Million of that size. They wanted to beat it. There was definitely a question, a few weeks ago getting into it, of whether they would cover, whether they would meet that guarantee. PokerStars has some fairly spectacular misses amongst its generally, covers its guarantees pretty handily, but it's not immune to misjudging things. So it's absolutely possible this time. It was quite a tall order. But of course, with the last couple of weeks with online poker traffic booming in the wake of the coronavirus, I think it quickly became apparent that it was going to be a more question of how far it was going to exceed that guarantee rather than whether it was going to meet it. And indeed, it did, blow it out of the water.
So they did roll the buy-in back to the more traditional $215 buy-in for that tournament. The guarantee, as you said, was $12.5 million. What was the prize pool in the end?
Yeah, so they needed to attract 62,500 people to cover the guarantee. They ended up attracting about 93,000 total entries. So the prize pool was $18.6 million, about 50% over the guarantee. It covered this guarantee within the first 2 hours of late registration. This was a tournament that had late registration open until day 2, so technically a 24-hour late registration period. People could re-enter up to 5 times. There were, satellites and guaranteed sit and go satellites running through to the start of day 2, and people just kept piling on. 18.6 blows any PokerStars tournament out of the water, and the only things that beat it are Party Poker's Millions Online, which are nosebleed online poker tournaments. They've ran 2, both with $20 million guarantees. Both did cover that guarantee, but with they had 6 months of ramp up, and these are $5,000 and $10,000 tournaments. So in this $200 level, whether you call that mid stakes or high stakes, it's kind of in that area. There's nothing close to it by 50%. It really is staggering how many people played that tournament.
Yeah, that's quite an accomplishment by PokerStars. I haven't seen a lot of chatter around, how big of an accomplishment it really is. Is there been any feedback that things went smoothly. I know that there's always the issue of scalability when you get into a tournament that has, how many did you say? How many total entries? 90?
Yeah, 90, what did I say? 93,000 total entries. And there was 61,000 unique players, which I think is an interesting little fact that if it had no re-entries, it almost would have covered its guarantee. So it needed 62,500 entries. It got 61,000 unique players and 32,000 re-entries on top of that. So, yeah, I mean, that's a lot of people. The PokerStars software has a hard cap of, I think, 107,000 total entries in a tournament. As we understand it, that's a technical limitation of the platform. So they weren't far off that max cap that they can hit. But yeah, it all ran smoothly. The only thing that I saw was that they suspended their play money tables on Sunday, and I genuinely wonder whether that was to allow more, server space for this tournament to assure that it ran smoothly. Which, from everything that I read, it did. Which is also, a real technical achievement, because on top of that, there was the High Roller Tournament Series just kicked off. They had their regular slate of Sunday tournaments. Many of them smashed through their guarantees. Huge numbers of people at the cash game tables, and we'll talk about cash numbers later. But yeah, technically held up. And yeah, I mean, it really, I don't think it can be understated what they've achieved. I mean, it's maybe easy to look and go, well, it's PokerStars and they can always get people in seats, and coronavirus, so everyone's at home. But again, keep in mind that the record that they're beating, that they set 10 years ago, that was almost another era for online poker. That was... Wow, I'm going to test my limited knowledge here off the top of my head, but Europe wasn't segregated 9 years ago, was it? So Spain would have been part of the global player pool, I think.
Yeah, maybe France was at the time, I think, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, it's around that time, France and Italy. Yeah, I mean, to achieve it today, also ultra competitive, and we'll talk about what the other operators also managed to achieve at the weekend. I think it's a remarkable achievement that PokerStars pulled it off, and could accommodate all the extra players who wanted to play that tournament.
Yeah, big shout out, big kudos deserved to PokerStars for being able to pull this off technically. Their platform withstood 90,000+ entries. That's remarkable. And as you said, the play money games were suspended. To me, that's a positive. That to me showed that they were looking out. They were taking measures to make sure that there wasn't interruptions. They haven't publicly said that was part of the preparations or precautions, but it sure looks like it. And good for them. It's a huge tournament. I wonder how long that record for that buy-in level will stand, given our current status. But who knows? We might see another repeat performance of that somewhere in the very near future, given that we still expect a lot of people to be home for quite some time yet.
Yeah, absolutely. And some of the other successes that we saw at the weekend came from tournaments that will be continuing to run every Sunday. So it'll be really interesting to see how they perform moving forward. But Party Poker ran again their regular now Party Poker Million tournament, which is another $215 buy-in tournament. It has multiple day ones spread across the week and culminates in the final day on Sunday. Has a $1 million guarantee. Ran for months and never covered it. Quite often missed it by quite a decent margin, providing a lot of value to players. Last week, I think they covered it for the first time and just squeaked into the guarantee. Last Sunday, they exceeded it by over 40%. Total prize pool of 1.4 million, attracted over 7,000 entries. So, yeah, that was a smashing success for the operator as well.
Yeah, so 7,000 entries. Again, a technical feat for Party Poker to have that tournament go off with no glitches. I know that there's even denial of service or DDoS attacks are quite common, and no reports of those from last Sunday. Yeah, pretty clear.
Yeah, I think so. And Party Poker was also running their Powerfest. I think it was the first or second weekend of the Powerfest, second of 3 weekends of their Powerfest tournament series. Again, don't have all the hard numbers yet. I'm sure they'll put out a report after the fact, but just browsing down the lobby, everything seemed to cover on Sunday, which again for Party Poker's Powerfest is an achievement. They often have a lot of overlays. They kind of welcome them or have done in the past. But yeah, we just checking down the lobby. It seemed across the board they covered their guarantees, and by many of them by a pretty decent chunk. There was a super high roller $1 million guarantee prize pool ended up paying out 1.3 million. Just reading our good article here, penned by Anaj, like some did 50%, 80% over their guarantee. So yeah, it seemed across the board tournaments, from everything that we could tell, ran smoothly. And yeah, as I say, like Powerfest is still going on, and there's another Party Poker Million ramping up for this coming Sunday.
Well, as good as PokerStars and Party Poker did, one that really stands out for me this past Sunday is the Million Superstorm from 888. Now, Party Poker had 7,000 plus entrants. This $1 million guaranteed tournament by 888 Poker brought in over 11,000 entrants. And for them, that seems to be quite an accomplishment to me. Yeah,
there's a big asterisk against that number, though, because I think people have been entering it for like 6 months. I think it's been, maybe not that long. But that was an exaggeration. Just reading our article here, 3 weeks they've been running day one flights to it. They just carried their $1 million guarantee. They just covered it, which is good for them. I don't know. I would say, if anything, they're the one operator that sticks out at the moment that perhaps hasn't benefited as much as some of the others. We're not quite seeing the uptick in cash game traffic that we're seeing elsewhere. This covered, but didn't. It needed 10,900 entries. It got 11,600. As I say, people have been playing day ones for weeks now. So yes, I mean, they'll be pleased that it covered, and hopefully they can build on that. But it wasn't. We're not talking. The last two tournaments we talked about did 40-50% over their guarantees. 88 didn't quite achieve that.
Yeah, and another factor to consider when looking at the 888 tournament is the buy-in as well. The others were at $215. 888's buy-in is at a much lower price point of $100. So you would expect that they would have been able to attract more players at that price point. And it's great that they achieved their guarantee. It'll be interesting to see going forward if that is something that they can build upon.
Yeah, and the other one close to that price range is the GG Masters, which is $150 guarantee. And yet again on Sunday, so a week prior, they had, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, they had a $300,000 guarantee.
Correct.
That was up from $250 when it first launched. They covered that $300,000 guarantee. So they upped it to $400,000, and they covered it again. They exceeded it by about 5%. Needed 2,900, got 3,050, somewhere like that. So, and I think they have again increased it for next Sunday. Is that right?
Yes, that is correct. So yeah, at $250, they upped it to $300, met their guarantee for the first time 2 weeks ago, upped it to $400, met their guarantee for the second time this past Sunday, and upped it again to $500,000.
Yeah. So again, across the board, they're definitely the top four operators in terms of kind of European player pool, cash game traffic, all having great Sundays. And we can only really expect it to grow, I guess, moving forward.
Yeah, it's going to grow, I think, for sure in the near term. I think that the people are still going to be home for quite a bit of time yet. I think that some of the things that could maybe shrink the online poker sphere during this quarantine time could be things such as people financially not being as stable as they normally would be, and also just the amount of people getting ill. I think on a global scale, that is, I'm no doctor, no expert, so I'm not going to say that it's beginning to peak, but it feels like there's still a ways to go. It still feels like the projections that were made have yet to been reached as far as the number of people that will be infected. So, the financial situation and the health situation are a couple of things that can affect the attendance at these Sunday majors going forward. But we're only going to have to, all we can do is wait and see how it shakes out at this point.
So as we talked last week, there's obviously no live poker anywhere in the world. If an event hasn't yet been cancelled, it's probably just too far outside the horizon for it to be announced. What we are seeing, and we touched on last week, and we've seen more of that this week, is the opportunities for live operators to move their tournaments online. And we've seen a few more being announced to being hosted on online poker platforms in the coming weeks and months.
Yeah, so we've seen Party Poker partner with Poker Go or Poker Central, to be more specific, to bring the Poker Masters online. What do we know about Poker Masters next?
Yeah, so that's it's actually one of 3 that Party Poker have announced, working with third-party live tool brands to bring them online. Poker Masters is one of the bigger ones. It's going to run for 2.5 weeks in April. $15 million guaranteed, I think. So I'm not that familiar with the Poker Masters. I know it was obviously a live streamed event. I know the winners won a purple jacket. They're the 2 things that stick in my mind. And it's high roller tournaments, high stakes tournaments.
Yeah, and took place, I believe, in the Poker Go studios, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. So just looking here, I think they've published the online schedule. Buy and start like $10,000 and go up to $50,000. I'm not quite sure the details around like if it's going to be live streamed, but so that's cool. And as I say, it's just one of 3 that Party Poker deals that they've inked. In fact, before really the whole outbreak happened, and I think just coincidental, we probably touched on that this last week, is that they're going to host the first ever WPT online, and that's another $50 million guaranteed series. That's going to run in May, I think that was just fortuitous that this was kind of struck ahead of time, but the timing's worked out very well for them. That's coming in May, and that's going to have a pretty broad schedule. And then there's the Irish Poker Festival, which is going to be hosted in April as well, all on the Party Poker platform.
So, you had mentioned the potential of live streaming Poker Masters online. It'll be interesting to see how operators fill their production needs with the online product. So when you had live products, it's very traditional to have television coverage, for example, like we've seen traditionally with the World Series Poker and WPT. But how they adapt and change to get some promotional material or watchable content for fans when the games are online, that will be interesting to see how they play that out.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you'd think there's an opportunity there, and they're going to have to do something. I mean, obviously the great live streaming content that's happening now is the Phil Galfond challenge, and that's going to provide a lot more entertainment over the coming weeks and months. I think that is only going to be successful in attracting more people to watch the final couple of weeks of that play out.
Yeah, so there's been traditionally some examples of covering online content. The one that jumps out to me was the what did GPI do with the cube back in the day, not too long ago? Do you remember?
Well, I remember what the concept was. I never saw the execution. I don't know if I could say with confidence that the idea was executed on.
Yeah. There was, I remember there being some controversy over watching a table with just the avatars there and live commentary and missing the actual live human beings. But they also did webcams too, I believe, that they were concurrently streaming along with the games. I wonder if when we get to a final table, if that is something that one of the operators might try to implement.
Yeah, it's actually interesting. On a bit of a tangent, a question that I've been getting a lot personally and over Twitter and stuff is, how can we take our home game or our pub game online and keep it going? And the obvious answer there is PokerStars. They've got their home game system, and it's pretty comprehensive. You can create a private game, control who can play. I think you can do both play money and real money, so that's a good feature. But what it doesn't have is webcam or audio support, and I think that's a big thing that people want. And of course, you could fire up Skype or Zoom or something on the side and do it. But having that integrated seems like a real opportunity. I know Unibet as well, they're setting up private password protected tournaments for people who want to continue hosting their game online. And they're saying that's been quite a success. But yeah, I'm actually struggling to think of an operator, honestly, real or play money, that has built-in webcams that you can use for home games. I know 888 has webcam tables, but I don't think they offer a kind of a private game setup. And yeah, maybe there's an opportunity there for someone. Even if it was just play money, then people would settle up off-site.
So is 888 the only one that has webcam capability? Did PKR have webcam capability back in the day?
I don't know.
Sure.
Maybe
it was just animation.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I want to say like some of the Asian sites like PP Poker, like they're bill themselves as private poker club tools, although they're kind of used for a lot more than that. But my guys, they have, but I don't have any experience playing on them. And I'm not sure if I would recommend them to like a mate down the pub who wants to keep playing his like small, £10 home game or something. So, yeah, that was a total tangent to what we were talking about. But
that's okay. And I think that, we've heard talk recently from Party Poker specifically about trying to use facial recognition as a security feature. That plays into, or at least seems closely related to offering webcam ability at the tables.
Yeah, and I know Rob Young, I think, spoke on this podcast and said he wanted audio chat at the table rather than text chat or emoticons. Like he wanted using the microphone of your mobile phone or laptop, I think. So, I mean, the idea is obviously out there. It's nothing new. And I'm sure there must be at least a free tool. I remember even maybe way back when Google Hangouts was a big thing, that somebody had made an app based on Google Hangouts, which supported like webcam and audio along with playing a poker game. But there's definitely a huge demand out there. Like I was shocked by how many people reached out to me, like asking for recommendations, both publicly and privately, looking to take their game online. And it doesn't seem like there's an obvious go-to recommendation if you want that webcam functionality, which I think a lot of people are looking for.
Yeah, well, they say that necessity is the mother of invention. So perhaps we will see some new innovations coming in online poker as a result of the situation that we're currently in with COVID-19. So we saw online poker operators have a tremendous Sunday with their major tournaments. Great turnout across the board. We are also seeing numbers spike in cash games. Nick, how's traffic looking these days?
Yeah, it's a term used to describe everything at the moment, but it's unprecedented the amount of cash game activity there is in almost every market, on almost every site. We're seeing 50 to 100% growth month over month. We're in a period where you would normally expect traffic to decline. March, normally the end of like the winter period, the weather's getting better, and traditionally this would be time more people would be going outside and doing less indoor recreational activities. Obviously that has been upended with the current situation. I am blown away by the impact that it's had. I thought like we'd definitely see a noticeable bump. If you look at the total cash game traffic graph since tracking began, which was 2006, so we're talking like an almost 15-year record. It is the most noticeable spike in that whole period. The only two biggest changes are like Black Friday and this. They're the two standout changes. It's been extraordinary.
That's quite some company. Give us some absolute numbers. So where are we at now compared to the peak of total? So, and just to make things clear, any numbers that we provide are cash game seats occupied, not unique players.
Yeah, and the numbers are the average number of concurrent players playing at one time on any site that's tracked by Game Intel, which tracks around 70 of the world's largest online poker rooms, and includes anyone that you probably would think of. So this time in February last month, we had concurrent cash game traffic daily at around 30,000. It is now 45,000. So that is across the board in every market up 50%. That is at 45,000. That is a 5-year high. So we have to go back to 2015 when we're at that level. We're at that 45,000 kind of level. We're seeing in the markets that have been affected earlier, so Italy, we're seeing an even more pronounced change. So Italy has gone from what is normally 1,300 to today we're looking at almost 3,000. So that's increased by more than 100%. and will probably rise further. I mean, that has a chance to actually hit an all-time market high. So this market, this answers our question from before. The Italian market started in late 2011.
Okay.
And I mean, it peaked at like 4,500. We're at 3,000 now. There's no signs of it slowing down. So we could absolutely see that set a market high. In the European segregated market, which is, Spain and France, similarly, that's gone from 3,500 to where are we now? 7,500. So again, that's more than double. I would expect to see the same in the global market, maybe slightly less, just because it includes, so many different markets. It includes a lot of Asian markets and that kind of thing, where if anything, they might be coming out of lockdown. So maybe we won't see like 250% growth, but we're gonna see double at least, I would say, in pretty much any market and on any site. I mean, there are some that have done better than others, but everyone's seeing double-digit gains over the last couple of weeks.
So this is a 5-year spike. If I'm trying to put into context what happened in 5 years ago that may have started the downward trend of online poker cash game traffic at that point, I'd have to say it was probably spin and goes at that point that really had an impact.
Yeah, I wouldn't. It's difficult when you look at the decline in cash game traffic. There's no obvious points like, oh, well, that's where spin and goes were introduced. It's not that definitive to me. There's just been a general trend over the last 5 years of people playing more tournaments. Spin and goes was one. Obviously, that was introduced over a period of, ultimately, they're still being introduced now on some sites, only introduced them in the last few months or the last year. That's been going on for like 5 years. And even when they're launched, it took a while for them to become popular. It's not like overnight people went, I'm going to just play those now and not, six max no limit hold'em. But with growth in MTTs, growth in weekly schedules, and the big series, spin and goes, and just regular sit and goes. And, we went through a double or nothing craze for a while, didn't we? And then there were 50-50s and a bunch of other weird variants. And then knockout tournaments, both in sit and goes and MTT format, has been successful. Broadly speaking, when we look at traffic, the market, the online poker market, when we look at the reporting from public companies, the reporting from regulated markets, it is roughly static. Some are up, some are down. But over the last 4 or 5 years, it's roughly static. But what we're seeing is cash games have gone from 70% of the market and tournaments 30% to that being fully reversed. Tournaments now make up 70% of the market. So when we talk about the massive decline after Black Friday, that cash game traffic decline is reflected in a growth on the tournament side of things. And so, yeah, we would expect cash game traffic to be declining seasonally. We expect it to be declining because players are moving over to tournaments, and yet we're seeing markets up, 250%.
Yeah, it's important what you just highlighted there, that the cash game traffic figures are not a representation of the overall health of online poker. It's more of a change between the cash games and tournaments. Players' preferences there. So I know that is often very much confused. People look at cash game traffic and they see it declining, and they just automatically put that on online poker is declining at that particular rate, when really it's a move. It's a combination of things, but primarily a move from cash games to tournaments. It's cash game traffic is something that I think is probably more allows more flexibility than tournaments. Perhaps I can imagine people playing more on mobile, for example, cash games than they would tournaments. Though the shorter duration tournaments such as spins and small sit and goes might be the exception there. But it strikes me that MTTs are probably more prevalent for desktops. I don't know if we have any data to give us more insight on that particular point.
Yeah, you could be right. I think maybe if you're seeing an influx of people getting back into the game, their natural thing might be, I play cash games with my friends, or, that's what I played 10 years ago when I used to play online poker. So, the default might be just clicking the, sit me down at a table, or clicking on, their Zoom or fast forward game, whereas they might not be so familiar with some of the new inventions like lost, reset and goes, spin and goes, like, knockout tournaments and that kind of thing. So yeah, it might be like the default that people jump into. Should reference, I think last week we talked very briefly that I just started a poll on Twitter asking people whether their games had been fishier or not. And I think the poll had only been open an hour at that point. I mean, that closed. I think it got like 600 or so responses. And of those who responded with an opinion, it was something like 80% of people said their games were fishier than before. So we're definitely
How many? 80% did you say?
80%, yeah.
Wow.
Or maybe it was 70%, and then 15% said about the same. 15% said they're tougher, something like that. So it's that was pretty a clear signal that people are saying that it's not just that loads of games are popping off, loads of tables running. It's that the games are easier to play. And what's one of the best things about this when loads of people are taking to the tables, and we're seeing it's not just the bigger operators benefiting. We're seeing it, across the board. Really, is that some of the smaller sites that you might prefer to play on, there's a lot more games running now. So if you played with Run It Once, or if you played with, even like 888 or iPoker, much smaller than PokerStars, you're going to have more games running around the clock, more game types, different types of tournaments, just firing off quicker.
Yeah, I'd be very interested to know of the 15% that said the games are tougher, what games are they playing? It strikes me that the division there could be a difference in the game types that they're playing.
I would just say that's 15% of people not wanting to say that their games are easier.
That very well could be too, yeah. Playing the strategic information game. Yeah.
So, if you are, I think I hesitated to say this last week as well. Like, it's not, you don't want to embark on this huge hobby of spending a lot of money on online poker if you're stuck at home. But if you play poker and you, are interested or played it before, then you might be shocked by how soft the games are now compared with last time you dipped your toe in the water. So you might be interested in giving it a spin.
Yeah, and there's plenty of free rolls. There's play money games. There's games for every budget. You don't have to go crazy and kill your bankroll just because you're staying home. There's plenty of entertainment to be had at multiple price points. Well, that wraps up this episode of the Poker Fuse podcast. As a reminder, please give us a like and a subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And you can also follow us and interact with us on Twitter. Nick is at PokerProJones. I'm at SpookyBugs. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in.